Everyone could take a seat. Good afternoon, everyone. It's with great pleasure that I welcome everyone to Celebrating Teachers, the BEF's annual event where we honor and celebrate Brookline's exceptional educators. I'm thrilled that we are able to be here in person at the Florida Ruffin Ridley School, as well as live streaming this event thanks to the Brookline Interactive Group. My name is Catherine Burke. I'm the president of the Brookline Education Foundation. Since 1981, the BEF has been supporting excellence and innovation in the public schools of Brookline. And we're proud to continue our tradition of celebrating and supporting professional learning for Brookline teachers today. Celebrating Teachers is one of the highlights of our year. It really is. So, where we can show public appreciation and thanks for the important work that happens every single day in Brookline classrooms. And this has been a year when we really need to highlight, appreciate, and thank all the teachers in the public schools of Brookline. To our educators here today, including as well as our incoming superintendent, Dr. Linus Guillory, welcome. We are so glad you are here. It's like the dream team over there. So I also want to welcome the teachers, administrators, parents, students, generous donors, and others from the Brookline community who are watching the live stream this afternoon. And I'd like to welcome the members of our school committee. Thank you for your time, energy, and service in helping Brookline remain committed to the education of our youngest citizens. I hope you are enjoying the role reversal, watching someone else on the big live stream. In particular, I'd like to acknowledge Barbara Scotto, who recently stepped down from the committee after serving since 2009, and who was the BEF's liaison in recent years, as well as an esteemed former Caverly Award winning teacher. Thank you, Barbara, for all you've done for the public schools of Brookline. The work of the BEF would not be possible without the tremendous efforts of the members of the board of directors and the advisory board. Thank you to all for your dedicated hard work and support of the foundation. I also wish to acknowledge our executive director, Elizabeth Askley, and our associate director, Brenda Sullivan, for their tireless work throughout the year. Brookline educators have a curiosity about the world and a passion for learning. They are committed to inspiring and challenging young minds. The BEF's grant-making approach supports, facilitates, and encourages the pursuit of lifelong learning for Brookline teachers. Despite the challenges of working during this pandemic year, we received no shortage of applications from Brookline teachers eager to undertake more professional learning. We are proud to be able to support them in these endeavors. BEF Idea Lab grants support experimenting with creative and innovative ideas in the classroom, with an emphasis on hands-on experiential learning. This year, we awarded 14 Idea Lab grants to 17 teachers. Teacher grants provide opportunities for teachers to deepen knowledge in their field or to explore new ideas. This year, we awarded 19 teacher grants to 22 teachers. And collaborative grants promote cooperative efforts across disciplines, across grade levels, and across schools. This year, we were able to award 20 collaborative grants, reaching over 350 Brookline teachers. All told, and thanks to the generosity of our donors, we are funding nearly $290,000 in grants to educators in Brookline this year. I'd like to thank board members Sajal Chander, the chair of Idea Lab, Diane Picorni-Wilson, the chair of the Teacher Grant Committee, Amy Deutsch, chair of Collaborative Grants, and Kathleen Schoen, chair of System-Wide Grants, for their leadership in these efforts, as well as all our hardworking board members who read and researched and met and discussed the many grant applications. Congratulations to all our awardees. In normal times, they would all be here, and we would ask them all to stand now and be acknowledged. But instead today, you saw them, or the live stream audience saw them on slides that were scrolling before we started the program. But I would like to mention here 3 grant recipients who received additional special recognition. The Adam Russell Gelfand Fellowship was created to honor the memory of Adam, a Baker School student who died while he was in 5th grade. Adam's parents established the award to honor the many teachers who were important to their son during his life. This year, the fellowship will go to Megan Birdie Kaufman, art teacher at Baker School, for her grant to study the Chorotega pottery of Costa Rica. The Charlie Baker Legacy Award provides additional funding to a BEF teacher grant recipient to encourage the study of the United States economic, environmental, ethnic, racial, or cultural past, or to encourage the study of world geography. The 2021 Charlie Baker Legacy Award is presented to Mark Goldner, middle school science teacher at Heath School, for his grant to study the effects of climate change in the Norwegian Arctic. This year, we are pleased to be able to give a new award to a middle school teacher grant recipient in memory of David E. Pradell, a beloved teacher at Lawrence and Driscoll schools for over 30 years. Mr. Pradell had a lifelong impact on his students. The BEF was approached by some of these students, now in their 50s and 60s, who had stayed in touch with him until his recent death at age 90. The award will be presented each year to a middle school teacher grant recipient whose work will stimulate students' imagination and curiosity, help students develop self-assurance and self-esteem, encourage student collaboration, and/or instill an abiding sense of social responsibility. I'm so pleased to announce that the first ever Pradell Award winner is Elise Terry, middle school social studies teacher at Heath School, for her grant, Putting Project-Based Learning into Practice. I'm also excited to announce the return of the Margaret Metzger Fellowship and the 2021 awardees. Margaret Metzger taught English at Brookline High School for over 40 years before her death in 2013. She influenced thousands of students and educators through her teaching, writing, and mentoring, including some of our very own current board members. To honor her life and achievements, the BEF worked with a devoted team at BHS to establish the Margaret Metzger Fund to support a fellowship grant program. This fund creates grants to support the continuation of Margaret's work, thinking about the classroom, writing about teaching, and furthering the art of educating young people. The 6th class of Metzger Fellows who will work this summer includes Susan Balo, Baker School, 7th grade social studies, Zach Broken Rope, BHS School Within a School English, Elisa Connor, BHS Spanish, Will Gordon, Lawrence School Paraprofessional, Colleen Kavanaugh, Runkle School 5th grade, and Wan Wang, Driscoll School Mandarin. There will be a public celebration of the Margaret Metzger Fellows in the fall. Please stay tuned for details, and we hope you'll be able to join us. And now for the main event. In 1984, the BEF created the Ernest R. Caverly Award to recognize Brookline educators who have made outstanding contributions to excellence in education. One at the K-8 level and one from Brookline High School every year. The award is named after Dr. Caverly, a distinguished public school leader, educator, and Brookline School superintendent. Each year, the BEF asks educators in Brookline to nominate colleagues for the Caverly Awards. We convene a committee on which I was honored to sit this year, composed of board members and prior award winners who consider the compelling and inspiring letters submitted in support of each nominee by colleagues, parents, and former students. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the members of the Caverly Award Committee for their time and thoughtful efforts that led us to today's celebration. Chair Karen Wang and board members Rachel Goldman, Lisa Ting, and Tam Sitkoff, as well as faculty members Laura Vish of Runkle and Mark Vanderzee of BHS, who are our 2019 most recent Caverly winners. On behalf of the Brookline Education Foundation, I'm delighted to announce this year's Caverly Award winners are Francesca Stark, fifth grade teacher at Driscoll School, and Betsy Davis, French teacher at BHS. It's my pleasure to introduce Anthony Meyer, head of school at BHS, who will tell us a little about Betsy.
Can you hear me okay? It's nice to see some familiar faces, including some graduates and former students. Thank you, Catherine, very much. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Brookline Education Foundation, leaders, donors, and supporters. To bring back celebrating teachers was essential this year, given the type of year we've had, and what a joy to hear about the many awards and grants that our teachers are receiving. It's my honor in this case to present to you Betsy Davis. So I will take a little space in order to make space. And I want to acknowledge Betsy Davis has taught at Brookline High School and in the public schools of Brookline for 35 years. So can we take a moment and recognize that? She began in 1986. I think it is not surprising that it was 2 years after the Caverly Award award was created, probably with Betsy's in mind. I also want to thank Andrew Kimball, who is here, Agnes Alberola, our longtime World Language Chair, Rachel Io, our current chair, Laura Gurry, who's here with us, BHS grad Fatima Del Al-Rumi, and our English language learner team, Katya Babitskaya, Katie Frost, Sima Kirsten, Mindy Paulo, and Ali Whitebone. They are the individuals who drove Betsy's nomination that is so incredibly well-deserved. So thank you, all of you colleagues, for sharing that. So what to say about Betsy? She holds incredibly high expectations for every student and every member of our community, regardless of her interaction with them. High expectations and then remarkable flexibility, grace, and perseverance in finding how to support those students in order to learn, achieve, and find a place at Brookline High School. So we see that in her French work, and Catherine mentioned that she is a longtime teacher of French at Brookline High School. That is true. It is also true that she has for many years served as our international student advisor. It is an incredibly important role as families and students arrive from countries all over the world and land in our main office, and I see it and have seen it for the last 5 years. Their incredible, likely fear, concern for what school will look like. And Betsy Davis walks out from her office, greets them, and in that very moment, I feel tremendous pride and, more importantly, tremendous confidence that they will be incredibly well taken care of at Brookline High School. Betsy she sweats the small stuff, and I think that notion can be poked fun at. There was a book that was around for a long time about sweating the small stuff. Betsy does it, and it matters, and it benefits all kids. I see that in her work with our EL team, with our French team. I also see it in our larger leadership teams. Betsy is the person who raises her hand and says, "What about this?" or "What about this?" And almost always she is correct. It's that extra detail that kids need in order to be successful. She has been a huge supporter, an active participant in international travel, and her colleagues here today can talk about how wonderfully she leads those trips with curiosity, a huge heart, and confidence in what our kids can learn from those experiences. So 35 years of Betsy Davis, it is impossible to imagine Brookline High School without her. She is an excellent teacher. She protrudes grace and concern for all involved. And she's just a gem of Brookline High School and the public schools of Brookline. So it's my honor to introduce to you Betsy Davis. Hoping I'm not, well, I am removing someone's speech, but it's going to be right there. Okay.
Thank you so much. Do you want the wipes?
I'm going to wear a mask, everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anthony. My notes say breathe, slow down, and don't cry. So I think I've got this for the moment. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations to my new friend, Francesca, and to all the grant recipients. And to the Brookline Education Foundation, thank you for the support and recognition you bring to Brookline's teachers each year. So this is the big speech that's expected from the Caverly winners. Yikes, what do I share? My personal journey, my thoughts on education, or the story of when I was showing a movie in my French class and wanted to fast forward through that slightly inappropriate scene, but instead somehow ended up freeze framing on that. Andrew, you know what I'm talking about. There's so much to tell you about these 35 years, and I've decided to give you just a smattering. So high school graduation, college graduation, wedding, birth of my children, Caverly Award. Okay, here the crying starts. Receiving this award is definitely up there with the greatest moments of my life. I still can't fully process all of this. Me? I feel so honored and humbled that my dear colleagues and students secretly created a packet of nomination letters and testimonials that weeks later continue to make me shake my head in disbelief. What could have compelled them to do this? To know that they value my work and took time from busy personal and professional lives to make this happen while dealing with a pandemic, no less. Wow. My deepest thanks to all of you. I'm still absorbing and savoring your every word. Well, in early April, Assistant Head of School Hal Mason offered up a game to start off one of our Tuesday faculty meetings and to entice us to get to a Zoom meeting on time, no doubt. If we landed in the lucky breakout room, we would win a PTO donated gift card to a local business. There had to be over 20 breakout rooms, so the odds were not in our favor, and I never win anything anyway. But when my friends and I in breakout room number 1 found out that we were, in fact, the winning breakout room, I couldn't believe my good fortune. A gift card to Clear Flower Bakery was mine. Such luck. Well, a few weeks later, on a day when many students left remote world, and I literally met some of my students in person for the first time all year, a BEF delegation stopped by my classroom, along with Dr. Marini, Anthony Meyer, and Janae Taro. I thought that our visitors wanted to welcome the kids back to school or see OLS in action. And then Dr. Marini started talking about the BEF and honoring teachers, and the kids were clapping. And it began to dawn on me that as important as the Clear Flower gift card was, this honor was going to be a whole other category of great. I began to feel like Brookline royalty, nominated by my very own colleagues and students. No way. Okay, teachers, so you're on a plane and you're grading papers. How long does it take before your seatmate makes the astute observation, oh, you're a teacher? The conversation then often takes some weird turns. They start to reminisce about their own high school experience, good or bad. And sometimes when I tell them I'm a French teacher, they say, I wish I could remember my French. I took it for 5 years, I don't remember a word, which is really great. Thanks for sharing that. But most often I hear, wow, it must be so hard to work with teenagers all day. I don't know how you do it. You understand. I laugh to myself and I think, if only you knew, I have the best job. We teachers know that working in high schools day to day is rewarding and important. We also know that teaching content is the tip of our iceberg. We wrestle with achievement gaps and bullying, racism, hunger, trauma, the world's mistakes and ills, and now the pandemic. The list is long. Some students deal with so much pain, it's a wonder that they can get vertical and get to school each day. They are resilient and brave. Teachers and students discuss and dig deep, disagree, strategize, laugh, and rely on each other to do the hard, good work. Our school community is dynamic and vibrant, a second family to many of us, a wonderful place to be. I can't imagine a better job. And then there are the colleagues. Though we are largely alone as we teach and spend long hours grading, planning, we know that teaching is at its best when we collaborate. I am blessed to be surrounded by greatness in the BHS ELE, or English Language Education, and World Language departments. These are colleagues who would do anything for each other, who share ideas with an open heart, who come together for each other in times of pain and celebrate each other with joy. They are creative, fun-loving, and inspirational. And this year has stretched us all in a million new directions. We knew that this remote teaching, hybrid learning, in-person cohorted Zoom-tastic journey was going to be a wild ride, and we buckled up. When we learned that we would start the year teaching remotely, my colleagues jumped right in, texting ideas and questions early in the morning and late into the night. How do you stop the Zoom echo from happening? How do you make that student feel safe enough to put her camera on? What's an owl camera? How does it work? I still don't know. How do we create community as our students sit in their little boxes on our screen? The questions were and still are flying fast. And every day, my fabulous colleagues work small, medium, and large miracles with their students. And I've been so fortunate to have the support and guidance of incredible leaders as well. World Language Curriculum Coordinators Agnes Alvarola and Rachel Ayo, ELE Curriculum Coordinators Kay Polga and Mindy Paulo, Heads of School Bob Weintraub and Anthony Meyer. These leaders fiercely advocate for kids and programs while maintaining their humor and their humanity. I couldn't work with a better team of educators around me, and I share this honor with all of you. You are all my people and my heroes. Well, my friends and family will tell you that I don't love change. I just like to settle into a place and make it my own. I've lived in the same house for 30 years. Many of my closest friends are friends I met decades ago, and I've been teaching all my life. Teaching was all I ever wanted to do. Buffalo, New York, late 1960s, in the playroom we called the Little Room, where I taught the neighborhood kids at my green chalkboard with the white cursive letters across the top. Fast forward, and I'm student teaching in Rochester, New York, then spending a year in Nancy, France as a teaching assistant, my intro to the ESL world. And then 2 years as the French teacher in Maryland, a summer teaching ESL at UC San Diego, and a recent summer teaching French at the American School in Switzerland. Changes here and there, but all teaching all the time. And now, as Anthony said, I'm wrapping up year 35 at BHS, a place where I've made deep, precious, lifelong connections. A place where I met my husband, Vince, as he started out his teaching career in the science department, the cool young bio teacher with the motorcycle. This is to my parents, mom and dad, I swear I only wrote it once. A place where my son, Jordan, and my daughter, Sarah, walked across the graduation stage and never seemed to be embarrassed to tell peers and teachers that Miss Davis, Madame Davis, was their mother. That is a coup. BHS, where there's never a dull day, where I've met the very finest educators, where I've always been so proud to work, my second home. I've worn a few different hats at BHS over the years. As an ESL or ELE teacher, and now as International Student Advisor, I've worked with hundreds of families as they transition from their home country to Brookline. Teenagers leaving behind best friends and grandparents and everything familiar to settle into Brookline, BHS, the English language, our cafeteria food, and the US education system. In some cases, students arrive having lived through significant trauma and turmoil. Some are excited to be here, and others never wanted to leave home. Unlike most of our neighboring public school districts, the Brookline Public Schools have decided to fund this position, the ISA, showing the world that we value our international families and their experience in Brookline. How great that I get to welcome our new students, to show our international families that they matter, and to provide for a dignified landing in Brookline. And I've met so many wonderful people. The Somali mother who gave me appreciative bear hugs all the time. The Pakistani student who made me a bookshelf in his woodworking class. Our 8 eager China exchange students and their matching tracksuits each fall. The Iraqi student who calls me her second mother. The Haitian student who stops by for a little love and a Costco granola bar. I've always tried to treat everyone with the respect they deserve and to let them know they're important and that they belong here with us. Another hat, French teacher. So pourquoi le français? Why French? Certainly my interest was sparked by French teachers past, starting with Madame Buffamonte, whose style was so dynamic and frenetic that one afternoon she actually slid across the floor on someone's plastic notebook. I have always loved all things French. My French colleagues and I love to text about French grammar and silly puns and French-related Jeopardy questions. We are all Francophiles and proud of it. I love sharing my passion for the French language and Francophone cultures, helping my students bring together the many building blocks of language to express personalities, crack a joke, and learn to be citizens of the world. It's exhilarating for me, and I hope for them. I'm very proud of them all. An added bonus to being a language teacher is the opportunity to travel and experience cultural exchange. I've taken a few groups of students overseas, most recently right before the 2020 lockdown. What a great adventure we had, Frex 2020. Sydney helped me gather the courage to go up the Eiffel Tower. Aiden and I held hands on the plane to reassure each other at takeoff. I don't like to fly. Caroline and Emiko shared their new red beret for silly pictures in the staid Great Hall of the Louvre. And Ryan told me about his grandfather's experiences at D-Day as we looked out at the Normandy beaches. I love knowing that these students and my fellow chaperones will travel through life holding these memories close. No matter how our paths diverge, these shared memories will connect us forever. Last month, I finished reading The Little Prince with one of my classes, an annual ritual. In the 21st chapter, the fox teaches the little prince about how we create connection. He says, il faut être patient. You have to be patient. First, you'll sit at a little distance from me, like that, in the grass. I'll look at you out of the corner of my eye and you won't say anything, but each day you'll be able to sit a little closer. Isn't this just like students and teachers? In our last admin council meeting, we digested some recently collected data about students. Data that reminded us that connections with trusted adults may be the single biggest predictor of a student's academic success and self-efficacy. Like the prince and the fox, we start out in September not knowing each other. The students don't know what kind of teacher I'm going to be. Patient, fair, can they trust me? In turn, I look at the class list each fall and I wonder about them. Will they ever get these names straight? So many Kristins, Christinas, and Christines in one class. I don't know. Who will need me most? What do they struggle with? What makes them whole? And then we take our steps toward each other. Day by day, class by class, we let down our guard. We show a little more of ourselves. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable, knowing that together we're building connections, building community. For me, it's about trust and believing in each other. It's about being able to laugh at yourself. It's about give and take and feeling safe to try, to take risks in the community of learners we create. So all of a sudden, I am one of the senior members of the BHS staff. Steve Lantos beats me by just a few months. After 35 years, I guess I have more memories of this place than most. I haven't yet taught the children of former students, although the math and the calendar tell me it's possible. But I do now work with colleagues who were students in my class years back. I hold memories of pre-computer teaching, no Paradex, no Jamboards, no Ed puzzles, no email. These were days of actually writing notes on pieces of paper and walking them to teachers' mailboxes. I can still smell the freshly mimeographed copies, damp and purple, around 1988. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You have to be over a certain age. I see a board at the front of the room, blackboard, then green board, now whiteboard. I taste chalk dust in the air, stinging my eyes, brushing it off my clothes, and I hear the screech of the chalk. Thankfully, not a problem now with dry erase markers. And now it's the 2020-2021 school year, and I store my 34, soon to be 35 plan books in a tidy pile in the file cabinet in my office, one for each year. I can't bring myself to recycle them. They represent nights, weekends, vacations, summers, thinking about my teaching and my students. Maybe I'll go back into that 1988, 1999 plan book someday and pull out an idea. Not likely. But as I said, I don't like change, so I hold on to them. There have been some important grounding constants over the years, like the BHS mantras. I especially like this one. You are not done yet. I am not done yet. One of the wondrous things about teaching is the opportunity to grow, redo, learn, to finish a class, enjoy the view, reflect, and then continue the climb. I still have work to do to reach my students in new and different ways. There is no room for complacency. We keep things fresh and challenge ourselves as teachers to do more, to do better. And finally, I'll wrap up with a few mantras that work for me. Number one, be spontaneous, dance and sing with the kids. Number two, drop everything when you're needed, be the safety net. Number three, meet students where they are and help them grow. Number four, know them beyond the classroom, the student who wasn't himself yesterday, the student who auditioned for the part, the student who gets up extra early to travel in from another town. Number five, don't put your PBJ in a plastic sandwich bag, it gets gross. Number six, gather them all together, love them, and don't leave anyone behind. I read through the list of retired Caverly winners past, and I did work alongside each and every one of them over the years. Pat, Dave, Margaret, Mary, Ian, Ricardo, Jimmy, and others, some of the BHS greats. And more recently, Steve, Elon, Lisa, Roger, John, Stephanie, Betty, Liz, and Mark. As I said, I feel like I'm among royalty. I can now add my name to the list of Caverly Award winners, which I can scroll through on the BEF website anytime I want to. I will never forget this joy, knowing that my work has been recognized by colleagues who took the time to look up from their work and honor my contributions. I think I'll take that Clear Flower gift card and buy some French pastries to share. And when it's safe, I hope to gather with my BHS people to toast the colleagues and students we love, the normalizing of the education world for next fall, fingers crossed, and my good fortune to have landed at BHS. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Now I'd like to introduce David Euclid, principal of Driscoll School, who will tell us a little bit about Francesca.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would agree with Anthony Meyer that it really is so nice to be here celebrating teachers and all the incredible work that goes on each and every year, but especially this year has been quite a challenging year. And I just want to recognize that it's really special to be here and honoring Francesca Stark. I also want to thank our colleagues, students, and families who have written letters of support for Francesca. They kept coming in and coming in and coming in, and I think I crashed their website at one point. But I just wanted to say thank you to all of them for all their support. I've had the pleasure of working as an administrator with Francesca for the past 11 years. Francesca's classroom is, without a doubt, an explosion of activity and engagement. Whenever I visit Francesca's room, her students are frequently working on group activities in the classroom or in the hallways. Whether they're creating presentations on the computer or performing a hands-on science experiment that involves seeing how sound travels through different materials, Ms. Stark's students work together to seek answers to essential questions. As an administrator, it's always fun to pass by a classroom like Ms. Stark's where there's so much energy and enthusiasm. Like earlier this year, as I happened to pass by her room, as I was walking up the stairs, I noticed that Ms. Stark was in mid-lesson, teaching her students about the stages of human evolution. And she wasn't just talking about it. She was actually physically demonstrating each stage from Australopithecus to modern Homo sapiens. And she was somewhere in the middle of, I would say, the Miocene era when I passed by her room. She was about halfway up. And I caught her eye and she caught mine, and I looked at her with a smile and I said to myself, that's Ms. Stark. Ms. Stark is one of those teachers who stands out above and beyond all others. The first thing that you notice about Ms. Stark is her deep commitment to her students. Student work is hung up all around the room. She has class pictures hung up outside of her classroom for her current students to see, and for BHS alumni who just want to come back and reminisce about the time when they were in Ms. Stark's classroom. I've had conversations with Ms. Stark outside of a room in the hallway when students from the upper grades at Driscoll School would drop by just to visit their old classroom and say hello to the teacher who meant so much to them. Ms. Stark creates a classroom where students give lots of thought toward their community and about each other. One thing that you notice when you enter Ms. Stark's room is the river table. The long and consistent flow of this winding river is not only a tool for Ms. Stark to integrate lessons on historical periods, but how people interact with each other and how this work gets transferred back to her school community or classroom community. Ms. Stark's students learn valuable life lessons each day, and the result of this is a classroom where students collaborate, communicate, and treat each other with respect. Ms. Stark also teaches her students to respect the world around us through her leadership through Keep Club, where students learn valuable lessons on the importance of recycling and finding ways to take care of the environment. Over the years, Ms. Stark has improved her craft as a teacher by teaching courses at Brandeis for graduate students at the School of Education. Ms. Stark has also mentored several Simmons graduate students, which, according to Ms. Stark, in her words, keeps me on the cutting edge of current curriculum as they share and try out what they're learning in graduate programs, and as I help them hone and leverage the curriculum that they create. Ms. Stark has also worked with the Harvard University School of Education graduate students, opening up her classroom to prospective students who would like to experience a classroom that involves thought, community building, and engaging activities. Ms. Stark is a tremendous colleague who supports new teachers as well as veterans on our grade level team. She is thoughtful and passionate about her work. She cares deeply about the Driscoll School, and she is one of those teachers who lays the foundation for the culture within our school community. We are lucky to have Ms. Stark as an educator at the Driscoll School. And I am so proud of you that Ms. Stark, that you're being recognized for all that you have given to your students, their families, and the Driscoll community. It is my honor to introduce this year's K-8 Caverly Award winner, Francesca Stark.
Where's my posters, honey? Oh yeah, there they are. Thank you. I really need like 100 Kleenex and maybe a handkerchief. I don't have any. Does anybody have anything? I'm not joking. I was crying walking in the room. Okay. So, let's see, I don't know when to put this up. I didn't have any practice. I like to make my students practice, and I didn't practice. I got this poster made, and it's really hard to describe why I made it. I may not be able to. You guys can. That may not work. I'll hold it at some point for you. Okay. All right. No, Dave, you don't have to stand there. This is so funny. This is how it started. I actually got the Caverly Award when Dave came into my room with everybody, and he was carrying all these flowers that Karen had made. So there were like 150 of them. And I said, Dave, put the flowers down. I was wondering why you were doing. You don't have to stand here, Dave. It's okay. I'll put it here. That's all right. But it's so funny. I'll show you later. All right. So in making myself feel better before I came today, I was thinking about the greatest speeches of all time. And I knew I wasn't going to do that, but I was thinking about like the Gettysburg Address. I heard that he was still taking notes right before, and he had 5 versions of it. So I have like 150 versions of mine. And I'm afraid, like, while I'm reading it, that I'm going to be sorry that I didn't use another part. So I'll be sharing them. It'll be like, there's the, version 1, version 2. So this is the 11th version. The title of it is called Just Accept It. The conversation will have to continue. I'm crying. I don't even know why. Okay, here we go. Greetings and thank you to the people in the room, the people tuning. Does anybody have Kleenex? I'm not joking. The people tuning in from Brookline Interactive. Oh, thank you, Vivian, to my rescue. Thank you. The people from the interactive big TV, and perhaps some spirits in the room. I think there are a lot of spirits in this room today. My mother's spirits in this room. My godmother's spirits in this room. I'm wearing all her clothes and her bracelets. I think Tom Ladenburg's spirits in this room. And so many others. So I really do think so. And just want to acknowledge them. I haven't been in a room with so many people that I love since my wedding. And some of the people in this room were at my wedding. And they saw me cry then too. My husband was at the wedding. So is Vivian Trowan and Steve Lantos. Where's Steve? Is he here? Not here. Okay. Like I wrote the speech as if he was here, but he is here in spirit. Okay. Some of you, I want you to know that I could have written a whole speech explaining why I love everyone in this room. In fact, I told that to Carol Schraft, that I just wanted to write a speech that was just one big thank you note. But I only have 10 minutes, so I will tell you all later personally. So this is the 11th draft of the speech I'm holding on to on the 11th day of May. And it's just the 11th draft I wrote this week. I have actually been writing drafts for the Caverly Award since 1994. At that time, I was finishing up my full year internship with Vivian Trowan in her 4th grade classroom at the Devotion School, which is now known as it's Florida Ruffin Ridley School. In other words, I was standing on these grounds when I first heard about the Ernest R. Caverly Award. At that time, I was in the process of applying for jobs. In fact, I have proof. This is the 5th journal that I had the year I was in Vivian's room, and I have Post-its. And so on May 11th, 1994, I wrote a letter to Carol Schraft. This was the draft. I didn't send her this, but it basically, I have my draft. Where are you, Carol? Oh, there you are, Carol. Anyway, the draft I have to you is in this journal that I wrote 27 years ago today. It's kind of meaningful. And it was at that time that Vivian told me to go see the Caverly Awards. She said it would inspire me. I was so moved that I went home and began to write my own Caverly acceptance speech, just in case I would win someday. I didn't realize it would be almost 30 years later.
In fact, in many ways, I hoped I'd never win because then I knew I'd have to write a speech. So I just kept writing one. I decided that I both hated and loved writing this speech. It's a really good exercise. In fact, I recommend that everybody in this room go home today or when you have a moment and start to write your own acceptance speech. It doesn't have to be for teaching, it can be for whatever it is you feel you've done. And acceptance, I made this font so big, I'm gonna be flipping around. I'm sorry about that. You did yours so well. I just, the whole time you were going, I was like, oh. How do you accept help? How do you accept advice? How do you accept a compliment? How do you accept feedback? How do you accept an award? Vivian used to always tell me, like, just take the compliment, she would say. And I was just like, I don't like it. So I actually, in some ways, really don't like this award. It's hard. It's hard to accept an award, especially when you look around and see everybody else who you want up there too. Which leads me to my poster, but it actually doesn't really lead to my poster. I don't know why I said that. I wrote this, okay, but I'm gonna show it to you anyway. My students made this poster because I say these words all the time. They're from a poem you may have heard from Mary Oliver. It's the fourth part of a poem called Something, and it's called Instructions for Living a Life. And the instructions are pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. And that's really my motto, is that that's what you should do. And in a way, that's what the Caverly Award is, right? It's a simple sign, but so is breathing. And look what breathing does for us. From then on, oh yeah, so I titled my speeches my imaginary Caverly Awards acceptance speeches, 2012, whatever it was, 1994, 1995, et cetera. And then my colleague, who's here in spirit, Steve Lantos, now called Dr. Steve Lantos, nominated me for real. It wasn't a surprise because he sent me the letters people wrote for me. I did with them what any good daughter would do. I immediately showed them to my mom. I wanted her to see that the career she told me to avoid due to the lack of respect for the intelligence of teachers had actually given me some recognition. I became more serious with my speech drafts after that, but I never even finished one. I want to be clear that I don't mind writing or giving speeches. I don't know if you can tell. I kind of like it. In fact, I like to get up in front of a crowd as much as possible. Many of you know Marianne Taylor. There she is. Marianne Taylor, who retired from Driscoll School last year. We both came to Driscoll School in 1995. Carol Shaft hired us both. And we don't really look alike, but a lot of kids and parents and even faculty thought we were the same person. Marianne taught art and I taught 4th and then 5th grade. Kids would walk up to us and ask, did you change your shirt? And then they'd say, see you in art. Marianne and I developed this kind of local version of Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and began to make videos, speeches, and stage events for people who were retiring. Bob Thomas and Amy Neal would join in. And when they retired, Jesse Curtihe stepped in. I loved writing those speeches for other people, so much so that I actually considered getting a side job writing obituaries. I also like to write poetry, and I like to recite poetry, and I like to have students read and write and recite poetry because it gives everyone a chance to dig into their worries and their yearnings. It slows things down and reveals emotions with a kind of elegance and brevity, like a sunrise. When Judy Steinberg used to come into my room, the Brookline Poet Laureate, I imagine most of you know her. And if you don't, I'll tell you a little about her. She used to come into my room with pine cones and beechwood and singing shells to teach poetry. When she did this, I felt like I was also smelling salty air or watching a moonrise near a beaver dam. In 1963, my mother, Suzanne Jackson Van Landing, it's a long name. My mother, Suzanne Jackson Van Landingham Stark, went to the doctors to see if she was pregnant. All of this came as a surprise since she had been told she would never bear children due to a tremendous amount of scar tissue from an appendicitis attack. While I was writing that, I was like, I wonder if my mom would mind that I was telling that in front of a whole lot of people, but I decided to do it anyway. She was almost 39 years old at that time. She was a bohemian painter, an only child. She had no living parents, and she was just about to get a divorce. The timing didn't appear good. But my mother said she was delighted and told all her friends she knew she was having a girl and that it would all work out. I haven't always been as optimistic. When I was 6, we were living in Greenwich Village in New York City in Little Italy. They called me Franceschina. I remembered people running after me saying, aspetta, aspetta, Francesca, which means wait, wait. Why are you always running? And I always didn't know why. I just felt better when I was in motion. When it looked like I was going to need some serious braces, because actually I was always told that my mouth was too small for my teeth. And people would always say, but you have such a big mouth. But that's what they'd say. My mother decided she might try her hand at teaching because she couldn't make a living on her art. Her own mother, my grandmother, Virginia Van Landingham, had helped to found a school in Kansas City, Missouri during the Depression for children who had been kept at home because of physical disabilities. It was called the R.J. Delano School. My grandmother died in 1939 when my mother was only 13 years old, but the intensity of her work had given my mother hope that she too might find a fulfilling experience as an educator. We moved from New York City to Portland, Oregon to live with a cousin while my mom went to graduate school. I remember my mother's sadness while she did her student teaching. Her rich life with artists and musicians and poets all seemed so far away. After she would pick me up from this horrible after-school place called Kinderland, she would hold my hand so I didn't fall in the ditch by the side of the road where all the rain flowed in Portland, Oregon. She would tell me about the lessons she designed to integrate feelings and art, only to be told she needed to help kids with their leveled reading groups. When she graduated, I went back to San Francisco to live with my babysitting family. I think I forgot to mention that I was born in San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco. So I went back to San Francisco while my mom moved east to find a job and a place to live. In San Francisco in 1969 and 1970, those streets were indeed filled, and I remember this even though I was 6 and 7 years old, with incense and musicians and dancing flower girls. I was one of those flower girls. I had a homemade long skirt and red clogs. I broke my arm once playing wiffle ball in that long skirt. My babysitting family drove a VW bus, dangerously I may say, and had 5 kids of their own. The oldest introduced me to Simon and Garfunkel, an interpretive dance. It was the first time I remembered sitting on the floor considering what was the sound of silence. I think I get it now. The public schools were the polar opposite of the streets in San Francisco. Girls had to wear skirts and stretchy white knee-high socks to school. Boys had to have short hair, button-down shirts, and slacks. We had to separate lines in the hall, and we had separate spots at recess. The boys had the field, and the girls had the small blacktop. My attempts to protest this injustice made girls stop their hopscotch and jump rope games to listen to me. But a political movement did not happen at that time at the Garfield School while I was there. One day, the phone rang in my babysitter's house, and my mom called to say she had found us an apartment and a school in one of the best school systems in the country. Guess which one? Yep. I packed my suitcase and my red clogs, and I landed in a rent-controlled apartment in Brookline, Massachusetts at 21 Westbourne Terrace. I was enrolled in Miss Ellenberg's third grade class at the Driscoll School. It was a strange culture shift. The streets were sedate, but the schools were free flowing. Kids could wear whatever they wanted. Boys had long hair, girls wore elephant pants. I think Miss Ellenberg was pretty new because she didn't have much in her bookshelves or her closets. So she let us go into the closets and climb up on the shelves and talk like we were in a tree house. I loved it. I have the same closet in my classroom and it's packed with so many binders, nobody could get in there. The only thing wrong with Miss Ellenberg's class was the way they only encouraged certain kids to try the hard math problems. It was made clear to me early on that there were math people, almost like it was a country of origin. So I don't blame Miss Ellenberg. It still goes on. Besides, it was in her room that led me to design a whole math curriculum around dream house architecture that I thought of when I was in her class. During my elementary school years at Driscoll, students not only had music, gym, band, and art, but we also had woodworking and home economics, and both the boys and girls got to go. They were rich with the smells and sounds of sawing wood and baking brownies and sewing. My first year at Driscoll, I was put into a little group of girls who all had single parents. Due to rent control, more families with single parents could afford to live in Brookline. Miss Dubin, the social worker at Driscoll, would not only meet with us during school, we went places after school and on weekends. She took us bowling. One of the assistant teachers in the kindergarten class was a teacher named Mrs. Gaines. She met with us to do art projects. One day we went with Mrs. Gaines to her home and she showed us pictures of her daughter and said she was becoming a well-known singer. It turned out her daughter was Donna Summers. She played us her music. We thought she was cool and beautiful, but we hadn't heard of her before. We mostly appreciated the popsicle stick artwork Mrs. Gaines did with us. It was these things that mattered. And I don't know what happened there. And I think about how we need to do more of these things to connect with kids before school, after school, in the summer, wherever we can. I know we can't get in cars with them because it's illegal, but we've got to do it. It's the relationships that keep us strong. Now, fourth grade was a different story than Miss Ellenberg's class. By the way, I'm not going through all my grades, don't worry. I'm sticking with these two. In fact, I knew you were thinking that. In fact, it was so different that it was probably more to do with why I teach than my positive experiences. If students said mean things to someone, this teacher would tell kids they probably deserved it. One girl passed out notes about me. I'm not going to say her name, but I remember it. The teacher grabbed one of the notes and read it out loud to the class. I think it said, "Francesca Stark talks too much." She looked at me and said, "Well, you do." That's when I started to not come to school. My mom would have to drag me there, and the principal, an incredible principal named Virginia Thompson, who taught me how to do outlining, I'll never forget it, would make sure I didn't run home. I think the principal must have worked things out with my teacher because I somehow made it through the year. You may have heard that I also went to school with Conan O'Brien. It's true. We were in the same horrid fourth grade classroom and the same homeroom for many years after that, all the way through high school. When he came to visit Driscoll on its 100th anniversary, the only thing he wanted to talk about was our terrible fourth grade class. It's the room I teach in now. If you were going to ask me what was Conan like, just watch him. He was exactly like that. And when he was a kid, he wore high water pants and he was a goofball, but he also was president of the class. I gave a speech at my graduation speech too, but I wasn't president. I was chatty. I'm still chatty. Even my beloved Miss Ellenberg wrote the following in my report card, which I brought for you guys today. It's the original. Am I going on too long? I'll cut to the chase. Okay, I thought it was more impressive. Big TV is not going to be able to see it, but here it is. And this is the last page. Says, I wrote, they made you do this. Like you had to fill in your own report card. Where is Big TV? Over there. Okay. So you had to fill in your own report card. And then the teacher would write notes. And it said, I wrote grade 3, December. If I was me now, I'd be like, December what, Francesca? Anyway, she wrote, Francesca was a new child this year and was very assertive due to her desire to get to know everyone. I'm still that way. I want to know all of you. She has worked hard at calming down and listening to others. I am very proud of Francesca. She recognized the problem, her talking, and has worked hard to develop self-control. She is well on her way. I'm still well on my way. And then my mother wrote a little note in my mother's handwriting, and it said, I'm very pleased with Driscoll School and Francesca is enjoying it. Francesca has a tendency to be careless about details. She is thriving in a calm, orderly environment. Her work with Ms. Dubin has been very helpful. I wonder what my mom meant. Like she's less grumpy. I mean, you know, it's interesting. I never asked her. I don't know why. Okay, I'm getting there. This is a tough time of year when I have fallen in love with my class, and now they're moving on and up soon to 6th grade. It's one of the many reasons I started the Keep Club. Yes, of course, it's to help the environment. And by the way, I'm so desperately wanting to drink these small plastic bottles, which I'm so against, but I'm having one now. So one of the reasons I started the Keep Club was because I could continue my connection with my former students. You see, really the most important thing about teaching, and I think the whole world, is finding and deepening these connections. It is why I wanted to talk to you about trees. Have you heard of the forest ecologist Susan Simard? You have? She's my latest hero. Dr. Simard's findings have unearthed a massive change in our understanding of trees. Rather than competitive nutrient hoarding, sucking the lifeblood from other trees in order to survive, an NPR interview with Dr. Simard points out that, quote, trees are linked to neighboring trees by an underground network of fungi that resembles the neural networks in the brain. I was going to make a poster of it, but I didn't. They call it the Wood Wide Web. I love this because in 5S, my class, we also have something called Red Wednesday Webness Day, where students research and work on whatever they want as long as it connects to school. And by the way, every day in my class has a color coding, and I dress now. I redid my entire closet so they're color coded, and I dress like Mondays, I wear green, and Tuesdays I wear blue. Is today Tuesday? Yeah, I wore it earlier. Wednesday's red, Thursday's purple, and Friday is orange. You glad it's Friday? So anyway, it's no accident that brains and forest floors are wired to connect. And this is my question. Why aren't schools doing more to make this happen? Thank you. Recently, Dr. Simard came out with a memoir called Finding the Mother Tree, Discovering the Wisdom of the Forest. I haven't read it yet because I've been laboring over this speech. But from what I've gathered, trees are more Florence Nightingale than Napoleon Bonaparte. And by the way, my sons were wondering, I was like, who's the worst general? And they were like, Genghis Khan. But I decided Napoleon Bonaparte sounded better with Florence Nightingale. Simard has also proven the critical role of something called the older, bigger hub trees. She calls them the mother trees because they are doing the most work to protect the vulnerable and younger saplings. And sadly, mother trees are usually the first to be cut down. because they are worth more money. I find that schools treat hub teachers much the way lumber companies treat hub trees. When teachers get good, they get cut out and put into administration and elsewhere, when really what they need to be is back in school, teaching and protecting the vulnerable saplings they're in charge of. Writing this speech has made me reconsider what else we can do to reinvigorate the work Vivian Trone and Kitty Bowles had in full gear with the Learning Teaching Collaborative many moons ago. Now, I want to say, having two superintendents in the room right now, I saw you both. I was like, this is golden. So just to say, I'll give you more information. In fact, I have a whole packet right here about it. I imagine that my style of delivery has made many of you worried that my speech would be endless. It is coming to an end, I promise. I understand. Actually, I checked the word count, and it was the same as Margaret Metzger's, so I thought I was good. But I have more I cut into my own speech more than she did. And yours too, Abby. I understand your worries, but don't forget, I have in my time here in Brookline learned a thing or two about being independent within an institution. Guess where I learned that? Miss Abby Erdman in her individual and institutions class when I was a senior at Brookline High School. What a developmentally perfect class for teenagers and for worrywart radicals like me. I hope my Caverly Award gives teachers, and I like the big TV people who are watching, I hope my Caverly Award gives teachers who are afraid to spend time digging into what fires their soul more courage to give it a whirl. Yesterday, my class was reading the story 11 by Sandra Cisneros. The reason we were reading the story 11 is because many students in my class are 11 or are going to be turning 11. And the focus of the story is on what it feels like when you turn 11, but you're still all those other ages too, like a Russian nesting doll, which is in my bag, but you get the point. I brought it. It's actually a cat nesting doll. I have been thinking about this in relationship to myself, because in the book 11, she's 11 and 10 and 9 and 8, but I'm 57. Like, that's the biggest nesting doll you could ever imagine. And I'm still all those ages. I was thinking that's really funny. I decided that it was more like paint on an apartment building, like a rental apartment, and you have all those colors and it's like, you know, and it's just, and you scrape down, you're like, no, and you just put your layer on top. Like, that's me. I've been thinking about this in relation to myself. The Caverly Awards make you do a lot of self-reflection. I see Brookline police officers who I hung out with at Paragon Park in the late 1970s. When I walk through the halls of Driscoll School, I remember walking with my finger all along the blue tiled walls, and sometimes I do it with a pencil. I just say that because you weren't, you know, I'd get upset with my own kids if they did that. So after I read the story 11, I asked my class, what did this story make you think about? And that's when this thing happened, which is the best thing in the world about teaching. Future teachers and everybody who's a teacher knows. One student said she always wonders if she will be the same person when she's old, or even if she dies and is reincarnated, she said, will I be the same person then? When she said that, all these kids started saying, yeah, me too, I wonder that too. I was like, you do? I think about that. I think about that too. And then suddenly there was this burst of conversation about death and dreams and deja vu and telepathy. One student said, and I swear this happened yesterday, I had to add it into my speech. One student said that she always thought the phrase watching your life flash before your eyes was just a phrase. But then when she was playing hockey, it happened to her. I forget why she said it happened to her, but she said all of a sudden she saw her whole life. Like when she was little and she was walking her neighbor's dog, she saw that. And when she was at a birthday party and people were telling her to blow out the candles. And then she went on to explain how she saw her life go in front of her eyes, except that she was watching from the point of view of the people watching her. And that made a flood of new conversations in the class. And one girl said that sometimes in a sort of random way, she will suddenly have this flash and think, I'm alive and everything's alive. And then she said, and then I just go back to what I was doing. And this burst of conversation was going on. One student said, Miss Stark, it's time for social studies. I think, and some other students said, but they had more things to say. Some of the class started to work on their ebooks about the revolutionary relatives, and a group of us went to the back of the room and the conversation continued. So really, this is the end of the speech, except to say that there is so much inside of draft 1 and 2 and 3 that I left out. So I hope this conversation continues. I also want to say BEF, I didn't forget about you. I actually had a whole section about you and how you were reminding me of Ernest Shackleton, another incredible Ernest, but I took it out. But I am going to tell you this. I want to say that if it weren't for the BEF and the work they do to keep teachers like me learning about podcasts and collaborating around gardens and climate change and everything else that you do that makes our hearts sing, I know that there would be many fewer mother trees left in Brookline. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just also didn't thank a lot of you in the room, but my sons are here and my colleagues are here. You did such a good job being so gracious with your colleagues. I just want to say that. That's your speech.
Okay.
And I'm not going to explain that poster to you. I'll do it another time.
When we went to Driscoll School to surprise Francesca with the announcement of her award, on the spot, one of the students in 5S made a quick sign, a poster that said, "Good job, Ms. Stark." So I think good job, Ms. Stark. So. Sorry, I'm a little discombobulated. In conclusion, I want to thank our donors once again for their strong and consistent support. This exciting and essential work would not be possible without your generosity. And I want to thank our educators. You teach, you mentor, and you inspire our children. The Brookline community appreciates and values all that you do. Thank you all for coming and for watching. The end.